it's Christian, we're talking about it. This is The Mike Charleston Show.
Alrighty, well, welcome to another episode of The Mike Charleston Show. Welcome to another season. This is season number 5, and as you can see, we changed up our studio a little bit this time, and I'm joined with my wife, Sarah.
I'm here. Welcome to another season.
Yeah, and we don't have Chuck with us right now. He's on vacation. He'll be gone for a couple weeks, but we might be doing part-time with Chuck. We might be doing a little bit more interviews. We have a lot of ideas for the show.
A lot of ideas.
Yes, but they don't actually always get implemented. Like last year, we had a lot of ideas.
We do. We come up with a lot of ideas. We come up with this big list, and then we pull from some, and then some just kind of never happen. So,
no. So we're going to try, but I didn't know if you want to inform the group what we've been doing besides painting our wall and having grandbabies and making our family expand a little bit more.
Had our third grandbaby.
Yes.
So now we're up to 3. One more coming soon.
Yes.
In a few months. So.
Yep. A lot happening, but that's not what we're here for. We're unless people email questions like that and we can ask. But we are trying. Just to let you get inside the studio, I mean, I could grab this camera and show you, but that probably would be bad. But we have a totally different setup. Joshua is not going to be producing the show as much. He's maybe a part-timer now, but Lydia wants to jump in. But right now, I'm controlling the audio, and well, not really the audio, but the video. And so when Sarah starts talking, I'm supposed to switch to her.
So if I'm talking and the camera doesn't switch to me, that's because he didn't switch. So
that's me.
Yeah.
So right now it's going back and forth.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, that's the problem with having me in control over here.
Yeah.
I can't do the sound effects because they're way over here, but we'll figure that out. We just had to get this going so we could get an episode out and all that. So, but anyway, today we're going to be doing something, well, I don't know about a little different, but you're going to be asking me some questions. We're going to be talking about convictions and is it worth it? Is having convictions worth it? And so why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So obviously we're excited about what's to come with a new season, but we're going to start off with having a look back. And so I asked you a question the other day about house churching specifically, but more about convictions in general. And so our family, starting with just you and me, 25 years ago, we decided to live life a little differently. And
I don't know what you mean by a little differently.
Okay, well, I think you do, but I'll explain for the listeners. So when we got married, we both, we coming out of Bible college and thinking that we're going to be in ministry, and we both were raised in church. So everything we know is like regular church life, what everybody does. But then shortly after we got married, we decided to start house churching. And Not only that, but, in college or when we first got married, we had decided we were going to homeschool, which we weren't.
Well, to be fair, I did give you a heads up. Like we were talking about this a little before our wedding.
True, we were, but we hadn't decided. It was something we talked about, and it's kind of,
I decided. I was just waiting for you.
Anyway, okay, you decided first, okay. And then I, like a good wife, submitted and said, okay, I'm willing to give it a try. But that was a huge change in our lives, and I was reluctant at first because I really love Jesus, and I love.
Okay, wow.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, and I really love church, and I love doing things for God, and I thought, what in the world are we doing, stepping away from all that? So anyway, we decided to start house churching and leave all traditional church for, to do things a totally different way because we thought it was biblical. And so now it's been 25 years that we've been doing things differently. And so my question to you was, after 25 years of being different,
right.
I feel like kind of like The Chosen, all the fish are going this way and we're going that way. Now it's not necessarily, there are many people who love God.
Is there a question here somewhere?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, my point is that after 25 years, would you say it's been worth it?
No, that's a good question. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, and I was like, has it been worth it? And so you laid out our life pretty well. I mean, I don't think it was that different, but when you look back on it, it's like, okay, not a lot of people homeschool, and a lot of people don't house church. A lot of people don't do those both together,
Right.
So I get how it is different and odd and maybe different to other people out there. So we were just kind of comparing it to more of the actual differences between normal Christian life, where the normal Christians in America, the cultural Christians, even the serious Christians, as opposed to what we were doing. And so was it worth it? Because let's be honest, along the journey, there's been some difficulties. There's been some heartbreak, some frustrations, and some doubts of like, is it worth it? Like, I could just go do a normal church. I could go be a pastor somewhere. I could just join a church and just show up on Sunday and not have any input at all. And that would make it a lot easier, honestly, right? I mean, so that's the kind of the question, is it worth it? And I would say, I don't care about the end results. So the end result isn't the most important thing to me. So whether it's working out or not, now that might be a clue sometimes for me to reevaluate and be like, God, is this really what you have us to do right now? Because what God tells us to do 25 years ago doesn't always mean that's what he wants me to do 30 years late, keep going. Just because he wants me to go through something, it might have been for a very specific reason, right?
Right. So you're saying like it could be just for a season that he wants us to go down a certain road. Kind of like some people will go on the mission field, but then they'll go 5 or 10 years and then they come back and you think, did they miss it? Did they? And it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes God has you do something for a time.
Absolutely. And some things change, circumstances change, and maybe I'm a little bit more available, for different things. We're moving into a stage where all our kids are moving out and we're turning into adults. And so we have a little bit more freedom to do things. And so, but I don't like to look back so much. If I look back, it is to maybe learn something where I can better myself in certain ways and be like, okay, I see weaknesses here. I see problems here that creep in, and how can I better that in the future? I don't want to go back and look at regrets, because everyone that looks back and regrets creates a whole world that works out perfectly, but you don't know that it's going to work out perfectly.
Right.
It's like, well, if I didn't do this, if I didn't take that job, well, it could have been worse at your other job. You don't know what happens, but you can learn from the decisions that you were making, how you were making those decisions, if you were really listening to God, if you were listening to your emotions, if you were listening to your wife, if you were listening to other voices, or you weren't really sure on what God's word was really saying and you were going on that. And then as you learn more about God's word, you're like, well, maybe I should change because based on what I know now, something like that. So I don't base my life on whether it's working out or not. Now, it's been working out pretty well for me, so I'm not going to complain. But the end result is not, this isn't like I'm going to a championship game. It's not about winning. It's about obeying. And I want to obey God first. And if he's directing me and showing me things in the scriptures, I need to obey that. And so if he does say to house church, even though it's going up and down, kind of like our audio right now, it's going up and down, and the audio is having problems. But the house church looks good at times, and then sometimes it looks like a mess because people are involved, and sometimes it looks really good, and it's the direction I know the church is supposed to go, but it's not easy. So just because God tells us that this is the direction you want to go doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, in most cases, it might be difficult. I
say it's often not. I remember years ago when we were driving an hour and a half to go meet with some other families for, I don't know, it was a lot of years, and a lot of years with little ones. So we had a baby pretty much every year. And so Sundays were just really hard for me because, with babies and toddlers and no naps and, just trying to keep everybody happy.
We pushed it for them.
Yeah. It was not an easy day. And I remember us talking about it. And I said, I don't want to do things based on convenience, because if that were the case, I'm like, well, then we'd stop doing this. And I feel like this is where God has us and what we should be doing. So we can't live our lives based on what's convenient.
No, but there is a time where you got to step back and reconsider.
Sure.
Like, let's be fair. If we were doing house church or doing this podcast and no one's listening, no one's showing up and like, well, God, I'm doing what you want me to do. Is there something else you want me to do?
Right.
Is there, maybe I could be doing this better, or maybe, maybe you got to show me something else, or, what's going on? Maybe I need to shut it down completely. But until I get that directive, I'm going to keep going with what I'm doing, regardless if it looks like it's working or not. Now, I would be totally stubborn if I don't consider some of the outcome, and be like, okay, my wife's not listening to me. My kids are angry at me. I'm doing something wrong here. I have to reconsider. But in that case, it's not like God directed me to be lazy and, not paying attention to my wife and kids and stuff like that. But no, if I'm reading in the scriptures and I'm praying, I'm seeking God, and He's leading me into a certain direction, and it's getting difficult, that doesn't mean it's not what God wants me to do. In fact, I might think that that's exactly where the Lord wants me, even though this is my mantra almost, is like, Lord, direct me. And if it's not the way you want to go, shut the doors. But what I mean by that is it makes it so clear, like, this is not the direction that we were to go. Doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, every decision that we have made, whether it was being debt-free, is completely more difficult. I mean, ask Jeremiah. He's trying to buy a house, and now he's got a little bit more credit than we do, because we had zero,
right.
And so he's trying to work the system. We never worked the system. We did it the hard way. So, like, sometimes in my life, I wonder, can I just do something the easy way? Honestly, can I just do something the easy way?
Probably not.
But it just seems like, I don't know if it's me or God just has to get something out of me. I don't know. But we have to do things the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to church, I've gone back and forth many, many times, because my heart's desire is to see the church do what is right. And so is it more of a Puritan view where I can be from within and purify it from within, or just be a separatist almost, and just do what we know to do and let them do what they're doing? And it's really difficult, because I love the church. I love God's people, and I know because God does, Jesus does. And so that's where my heart is. But it is so difficult in America, where we have specialized everything. We have special buildings for everything and special events. It's really hard to get people to think differently about church. So it is difficult, but I don't regret it.
Yeah. Well, so I'm wondering if, in 25 years of living the way that we're living,
Oh boy.
was there a time that you were tempted?
Oh, the last 25. I thought you meant 25 more years.
No.
I got to not do that.
The last 25 years, were you ever tempted to just like scrap it all and like, let's just go back to church. Let's just try to be normal Christians. And if so, would that have been more in the early years or more recently? Like, has that come across?
Yes and yes and yes. I mean, I've look, I'm not Superman here, and I'm human, and going through life, it makes you question things. It makes you, when we were raising our kids, there was a phase where, okay, I think I got it together, and then we had 3 kids, then we had 4 kids, and I'm like, okay, I got to go back to the drawing board. And then I thought we had it all together there, and then we had 6, 7 kids, and then some special needs. And you're like, oh man, this is difficult on us. And then they get older, and then, as you know, teenage years and things like that, where it makes you reevaluate what you're doing. As for church and things like that, yes, I've been tempted many times, because I think in our flesh and in our just normal life, we want the easy route. And there's been many times, you know this, that we've talked about this, and where I'm just, I'm tempted to just chuck it all. Let's just go to the church down the street. But we've tried that at times, and it's brutal. I can't.
We've tried at times, but you're talking about like an individual service and then maybe one a few months later or a few years later. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, when you say you tried, now some people say they tried and they'll take a year and they're trying this or that, but we've never done that. We've had, we probably could count the number of church services we've been to at an institutional, regular church on our hands. No,
I get that. The difference is, though, so the difference between convictions and just, going with the flow. I'm not criticizing people who go to church,
Right.
and if they want to, they enjoy their church and they say they have a really good church, then it's good. I'm glad for them. We have that conviction, just like homeschooling. Like I believe this is what God wanted us to do. There was a lady that I was cleaning her house. She was from Germany, and she came over here during World War II. She was a little girl, so she was an older lady, and her mentality from being over in Europe is you just go with the system. And I'm like, how well did that work out? That's why you're over here in America, because you got booted. Mm-hmm. But, she asked me why I homeschooled, because she was just like, oh, no, homeschooling. I am so against homeschooling, Michael. That's not good. That's not good. What about their education? And I said, well, I can appreciate that. I really do. But we just chosen to homeschool. And but she says, why? And that's a good question. And I just, honestly, I said, well, because I believe it's what God wants me to do. And she says, well, I can't argue with that. And I'm like, well, that's good, because I'm not arguing. This is what we're doing, and I'm not trying to persuade you to homeschool. She was actually trying to persuade me not to. But when I said, I believe this is what God has wanted me to do, she couldn't argue, at all. And I feel like that's what we are as Christians. There are certain things in your lives. I don't know what it is. It doesn't have to be homeschool or church or anything like that. If you don't have any convictions at all, then you're just a lazy Christian. Like, you have to have something you're standing by. And it could be a belief system. It could be something, it could be a way of living, that is spelled out in scriptures. But if you aren't standing by anything, you're going to fall for everything. Yeah. And so it's like, well, I'm doing this because I believe God has told me. And I'm not going to stop, and I'm not going to change until God tells me to. Mm-hmm. And once I have that in my mind, it becomes easy. Now, it doesn't mean doubts don't creep in. It doesn't mean that it's easy in the fact that how to do it. Like when we decided to homeschool, I had no idea what that looked like. Like I just really had no clue. Fortunately, Abigail was just born and we had a few years to figure this out, which really wasn't that difficult.
Right.
But it's not about the end goal of like, was it a success? Because I couldn't care less, honestly.
But yeah, you talk about success, you talk about results, and like you're not concerned about results. What do you mean by results? Like when it comes to homeschooling, results meaning like your kid's able to read or function in life, or you're talking about like, they did well. I'm talking about in the eyes of the world. Okay. So like obviously I want my kids to read and write and things like that. That's kind of what I'm talking about. If they're 10 years old and they can't read or write, the signs are like something's not going right. You should reevaluate what you're doing. Now, maybe not stop homeschooling, but you should maybe sit down and read with them a little bit more or do whatever. But I'm saying in the eyes of the world where they care about, FICO scores, they care about test scores, they care about SAT scores, they care about college and all these things that aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, but they have an agenda. They have their view of success. But my view of success is, am I obedient to Christ? Am I obedient to God? And so if I can, because at the end of the day, when I stand before him, I want him to look at me and say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Yeah. Not well done. You followed the ways of this world really well. You were a cool fellow. You used the system perfectly. Mm-hmm. You did all these things. It's like, no, you followed my ways as best you could. Now I'm not perfect in that by any stretch, but I want to look Christ in the face and say, I did what I thought you were telling me to do. I was reading your scripture. I studied it. I tried to figure out what you wanted from my life. Mm-hmm. And I lived that with conviction, without wavering. Yeah. But to be honest, there has been wavering in my mind and in my heart at times because we are human and we look for those. I want 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, or I want 100 people at our fellowship, or when we put on a camp, 400 people. We look to success in the worldly measures, and it's not, because what if, I put all my effort into a few people and that changes their lives. Whereas in a mega church, how many people's lives are really being changed? Right. And so it's where in the smaller groups, you're going to affect more lives for good or for bad. So, True. Whatever. True. But anyway. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I think back, for me, thinking of these questions for myself. And I mean, I remember, taking the kids to homeschool events or whatever. And there's a bunch of other homeschoolers there, supposedly mostly Christian. And I remember just always feeling out of place. And I felt like that's because we house church and everybody else goes to normal churches. Yep. But I wonder, do you think that, do you think most people struggle with feeling like they fit in, or do you feel like most Christians don't ever have that feeling of like, I don't really belong, I don't really fit?
No, I think we're just weird because I
Okay.
feel like a lot of Christians are cultural Christians to begin with,
Okay.
and they don't want to upset the apple cart. You know, you can just do a couple tests. I mean, look at Halloween, for example. To me, that's an easy one. I'm not judging people who do it, but it's like back in my day. I mean, I'm not that old. Mm-hmm. Churches were just starting to do like harvest parties and things like that to kind of do the compromise. Mm-hmm. 50, 60 years ago, you would never have heard that. You know, churches were not participating in Halloween. Now people just go with the flow because they don't want to offend. No one wants to offend anybody anymore. They don't want to hurt people's feelings because I don't do something that's going to hurt their feelings. Like, what do they care? You know, like, well, what are you going to do? I don't celebrate Halloween. Oh no, why? You know, like, why do I have to explain myself? I don't celebrate Halloween, you know, but if it's a Jewish person, you know, do you celebrate Christmas? And they're like, well, no, I'm Jewish. Oh, we understand that. Oh, okay.
Right.
So these people groups, they have their, like, it's easy to understand why a Muslim doesn't celebrate Christmas. You know, it's like, it's easy to understand why a Jew doesn't celebrate Christmas. But for people like us, why don't you celebrate? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Right. You're just making this harder for yourself. And to be fair,
Maybe we kind of are. But I do tell people, I'm like.
And we just blacked out. So
I do tell people that I'm not Catholic, thinking maybe that will help. But
I don't know about that. But there's a verse in the Bible. I think it's in Titus or something like that. I'm persuaded. I'm you know what? I tried to memorize this in like 10 different versions, and I'm fully persuaded that He's able to keep those things which I have committed to Him.
Yes.
Something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know where it is either.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
So yeah, you could quite look up real quick. She's got a computer for that. But that's kind of that verse right there kind of points us in that direction to where I am fully persuaded, and there's another word right there that I wish I'm trying to stall so my wife can get it there and say, oh, is that the word you're looking for?
I'm sorry. I'm still
Can't find it? Nope, she's not finding it.
I believe it's 2 Timothy 1:12. Does that sound like it's
sounds close?
probably the right verse?
That sounds very close.
Okay, well.
Let's just read it so we have a verse on the air.
Okay, well, you're going to have to hold on.
Can you talk to the mic though?
Just a moment.
Oh, you're still tight. What are you doing? What are you looking up?
I found it on Google.
Oh, mercy.
Okay, it says, "For the which cause I also suffer these things. Nevertheless, I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I have committed unto Him against that day."
Yeah.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that verse. For I am persuaded, and I have. There's a hymn that.
Yeah.
How does that
know
go?
whom I have believed in
Right.
and am persuaded.
Yeah, I know whom I believe. I know who I believe in, and I am fully persuaded that He is able to keep that. So it's like those verses ring true in my heart when I struggle, and when I think about, is it really worth it? Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be house churching in 10 years. Things could change, but I still want to be obedient to what Christ has said. So yeah, thank you, Joshua. But
So you said something when we were on the phone talking about this recently, and
did I?
I wrote it down.
We talk on the phone?
We do a
Yes.
lot, actually.
And by the way, we're still doing our 20 minutes a night with the silly books that we're reading.
Wow,
Oh,
babe.
okay.
With marriage books, and it's a great thing to do, so y'all should try it. Okay, so you said our failures or successes aren't based on our children's choices. And, you know, a lot of people struggle. They get to be our age and their kids start making choices and they're like, uh-oh, you know. And so they look back and they wonder, did we do things right? You know, I thought my kid would be more this or less this or whatever. And so anyway, I was like, wow, that's really good. I like that.
I would say that again.
Okay, it's our failures or successes aren't based on our children's choices. So when you talk about results, and you know, like a lot of people will look back and see like things that their kids are doing, and then they'll be like, oh, the results aren't there, so maybe I shouldn't have homeschooled, or I shouldn't have, you know, whatever we want to think. Well, then let's, you know, swing the pendulum a whole different way, because it's like, well, didn't work.
That's what we were talking about at the very beginning, was that the results of what that looks like, you know, we are tempted to say, well, if I didn't marry so-and-so, my life would have been better. Or if I didn't homeschool my kids, or if I would have homeschooled my kids.
Right.
But the problem with that is, like I was saying earlier, is that we create a whole scenario that is fantasy that works out for us.
Yeah.
And so we don't know how it would play out if you made all those other choices. You really
Right.
don't know. And so what you're doing is criticizing your choices, which is fine to a point, because you can say, okay, maybe I did some things wrong. Well, okay, what are you going to learn in the future about it? Because you can't undo the past. It's impossible.
Right.
So forget about it, but you can learn, if you're being stubborn or you're just whatever, then that could be a problem.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not dependent on my kids doing well, or memorizing scripture or being saved even.
Right.
It's like if I did what I thought was right, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to do what Jesus tells me to do. I'm not going to do what Jesus tells me to do if it works out. If my kids aren't rebellious. Now we were very fortunate. None of our kids really rebelled, but does that mean we did everything perfectly and that we'd say, okay, we're going to go on tour now to tell you how to have kids that don't rebel, but that's kind of nonsense. It's just, it worked out for us that way. But if you follow our exact pattern, it may not work out for you.
Right.
You have to obey God. You have to do what He tells you to do. And our success as parents isn't necessarily due to our obedience either. Our kids have a part to play in that,
Right.
And so it's a very dangerous thing to kind of look for results.
Right.
And it's not working here. It's not working based on what? Either the philosophy of the world, numbers of the world, or results in what we wanted for our kids, what we thought was best. But God knows best. God knows where He needs to get me. He knows where He needs to get you. He needs to know where our kids need to go. He knows.
Yeah.
He ain't dumb.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, when you said that quote, I don't remember saying that. But
that's
yeah,
good.
that was a good quote.
Speaking of results, and I when we were talking about that, I thought, so I think that parenting is very different than dieting when it comes to results. So if I'm doing some special diet for 2 years, so we're not talking about something I just started, but I'm doing this diet for 2 years, hoping to lose, 100 pounds. I'm a really large person,
And you gain weight. That's not
good.
good.
And instead I gain weight. At the end, it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure you did something wrong, because the results should reflect, if it's something that works.
Right.
In general, I realize there's special cases out there. But parenting isn't like that, where it's like, okay, well, if you have the right program or meal plan or something, then it will give you specific results based on that.
No, it isn't. And it's not. It's kind of funny like that, because yes, the results-based diet program or business results are make money. Yeah. If you're not making money,
Right.
you failed, in that way. But I'm not talking about things like that.
Right.
In my life and in my business life, I have failed a few times, and it's like, well, no, I'm not good at that. But but when it comes to what God wants, that's the difference. Is like, unless God is telling me to do something about my business or things like that, I should expect to see maybe some things, or maybe not. Maybe He's trying to teach me something, and failure is part of it. I don't know.
Right.
But what was that one part that you were saying? I was distracted because the cameras weren't working.
Which one part? I mean, I was talking about if you're on a diet for a couple years
Yes.
and it doesn't work, then we say obviously that there's something wrong with the diet. But parenting, if it doesn't work, doesn't necessarily mean there was something wrong with the parenting. I mean, results don't necessarily correlate the same.
No, not.
So,
I wouldn't say at all.
Yeah.
Right. It's totally different on those. If you have a plan to save money and you don't save money, well, then it's a bad plan. But what I'm talking about is spiritual, what God wants me to do with my life.
Right.
And if borrowing money and saving money is part of that, then so be it.
Yeah.
But no, it's in general, those type of things, you should see results. I'm not saying we shouldn't ever see results in life. And I'm not saying even in our lives, we don't pay attention to results.
Yeah.
That can be a sign, going on that like, hey, you should pay attention here.
Right.
And, but I'm like, I'm persuaded that God wanted me to do this. This is the right thing to do. I'm going to do this regardless.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen.
Well, I feel like in a lot of Christian things, when God calls people to do things, I don't know if you probably wouldn't say He called you to house church or to homeschool your kids or whatever, but when people feel directed by God to do whatever it is that they do, often it does come without results,
Right.
or results in the world's eyes. I mean, I think about the prophets, and I'm thinking they didn't have a whole lot of people that
No.
big fan clubs that were like, wow, thanks for
No.
telling us what God said. And it's like, as Christians, I think our duty is to seek God and follow the direction that we believe He's leading
Right.
us.
And the Old Testament prophets, a lot of them, you look at the book of Hebrews where it says they all died not having received the promise. They didn't receive
Right.
the promise,
Yeah.
and yet they were obedient to what God wanted them to do. And I
Right.
think that's the thing is I want to be obedient, whether I receive the promise or not.
Yeah.
I want to be obedient to Christ. Now, obviously, the promise is to be with Him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'd like the ultimate reward there, but regardless, I want to be obedient to Him. And we had this example I was telling you about was like when I first got saved.
Mm-hmm.
I had this feeling of being called, and you reminded me of that, and I was like, oh, I'm called to the ministry, and of course the church is like, oh, that must mean you need to be a preacher. Well, as I studied the Bible, so originally I first got saved, so I feel like God wants me to do something, and so I go along the path of what I know what to do at the time, and that's go to Bible college. But as I'm studying the scriptures, new information comes in, new things come in. I'm praying, I'm hearing what God wants me to do. I'm realizing that that's a faulty assumption. I believe all Christians are called to the ministry on some level. Was God calling me to leadership? I don't know. I just know that I wanted to do something for God. And I feel like when you get saved, that's why I feel like a lot of new Christians, they kind of have that feeling like I feel like I'm called. And most of the time they're really not called to be church leaders yet. And so they lose that zeal and that fire, and they ended up dropping out of Bible college and all that because it just wasn't for them. But they were supposed to serve in some way, and they couldn't figure that out because the church didn't help them with that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like they're obedient to the Lord, but sometimes we let other outside influences get in the way, and we go about it wrongly at times. But being called, I believe all of us are called of the Lord to do something.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of us get those feelings, and then we resort to worldly methods or traditional methods of doing things. But we still gotta keep listening to the Lord, no matter what.
Right.
So I hope that made sense.
Yeah. No, that
Well,
makes
it makes sense to you, but the listener out there is like,
Okay.
is he just doing circles? I don't know. But all right, is this about it for this episode,
That's
or you have
about it.
another?
No, that's all the questions I
So
have.
if you're paying attention, well, if you're not paying attention, if you're watching here, we have a couple new. I came up with this new segment. I think it's called This or That or whatever like that. And Elizabeth is going to be joining with us on that one. But I think we're going to be doing the music time with Sarah still. So heads up for that.
Music with Sarah.
What song do you like?
All right, babe. Well, back by popular demand is your popular segment of Song of the Week. Now, we were talking about this, and I said, well, maybe we could change it up a little bit, and I'm curious to see if it does change up a little bit.
We'll see. I know we had some debate, and I'm like, I love music, I love songs, and I don't think I could ever come to the end of sharing songs that I love. But
Sure.
I realize sometimes I just kind of go through the lyrics, and it's great, it's great, it's great.
Right.
And,
Oh, wow. See, this is everything went out again.
and just, for people that maybe haven't been watching previous shows or whatever, I wanted to do this segment because I feel like on YouTube and out there in social media, whatever, there are a lot of people that are very negative about music or about a specific song or a specific artist or whatever. And so it's very easy to get on and be like, man, this song, they totally blew it, or and just like knock it. And I'm like, I wanted to be like, there's really good stuff out there. And
You wanted to be positive.
yeah, so this is supposed to be positive. Anyway, this song is it's actually a choir song, and I'm not really.
Is it all right this season if I bring up a few? Like
Sure.
songs of the
Yeah.
week for me?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Because anyway, we'll go see how this works out. But,
Okay, well, this is mine this time.
It's
but
yours,
We'll see
okay.
what you got for next time.
I can always just keep switching the camera and start talking.
You could. Okay. This song, like I said, is a choir song, and I'm not really a choir person. I've sung in choirs, and I love singing in choirs. That's a lot of fun. But as far as
Choirs can be pretty
they can be really
powerful
impressive
if-
and powerful.
if
Yes.
done, like there's certain songs that are done for choirs. Like Thou, O Lord, is
Yes.
it's just perfect for a
Yes.
choir. There's certain choir songs, and Brooklyn Tabernacle does a very good job of it.
Yes. So
And-
this
but
is
if you
by
just
the
sing
Brooklyn
like,
Tabernacle.
if you, it is.
It is.
Okay. Well, then carry on.
Okay, so this song is by the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir.
Okay.
And it's called He's Been Faithful.
Is this the one that sounds like a Mentos commercial?
Absolutely
Never mind.
not.
Okay.
No. I mean, I don't think so. But anyway, this song, I tried to find when it was written. I think it was written in 1989. All I know is it's very old.
Okay.
I grew up with it. And recently I had shared with you, I had a dream that I was going to be burned alive for my faith. Don't shake your head. Let me tell my
recently.
story. Yeah.
Right.
And so I just remember saying before they were going to burn me, I was like, wait, can I say something first? And so I wanted to sing something. So I started singing the goodness of God. All my life you've been faithful. All my
Yep.
life. You know, that
Yep.
song that's very popular, good song.
Yep.
But anyway, so I just remember that in my dream. And then I woke up with this song in my head. And I haven't thought about this song in at least a couple decades.
What are you
it's
talking?
just-
We've.
I don't
Is this the song
remember
that
ever.
I think we're singing? I mean, because
I don't know. Well, it's He's Been Faithful. But anyway, I haven't
I
thought
thought we
about this song.
listened to it like every road trip.
No, it hasn't been on my liked list because I just forgot about it. But I woke up with it on my head and I quick got my phone and went on Spotify and found it. And I was like, this is it. Anyway, so I don't know. It just, to me, it's like, wow, it's kind of overwhelming to just, think about the words and everything. And I'm just very thankful that I grew up in that kind of family where we listened to a lot of music. I don't even know where this came from. The kids were asking me, did you have like the CD or the tape? I'm like, I have no idea how we had access because, it was before Spotify or anything like this. I don't even know. Like,
Kids don't even know what you're talking about right now. What do you mean? Before Spotify and
well, I'm just saying, like,
Whatever.
I don't know how I listened to it. I just remember my parents listening to it. And anyway.
babe, they probably had a tape. I mean, what else would they
Maybe,
have?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Anyway. But it's a great song. It is a choir song. But, and I actually just today I was trying to find like how to share it with people on YouTube or whatever. And I found the story behind the song and listened to that.
boy.
And it's a great story. So if you look it up on YouTube and look up He's Been Faithful by the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, there's actually one that will say with the story from
With the story,
author
nice.
or whatever, which was a great story. And I was like, wow, it's a very moving song. And anyway, so that is my song of the week. Obviously, it's called He's Been Faithful.
Right.
And that's what you're going to hear a lot is He's Been Faithful, and talks about, basically going through hard times. And when you feel like all hope is lost and you don't know where to turn, God's been faithful. And
Yeah.
we could come up with many scenarios and this happens, but God is faithful. It makes me think of that one. There's a passage where it just keeps talking about the faithfulness of God. And anyway, maybe multiple passages.
Right.
But anyway, so that's my song. And I think people should look it up. You can find it on Spotify. If you just look up He's Been Faithful, the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, there's one girl that's famous for singing it. And when the author goes to tell the story, she's with the one that offered to sing it, and then she told her story too, which is actually a great story too. So it's just more and more good stories.
So there's like, what you're saying is there's like two stories,
Yes,
and then there's the song and all that. It sounds like a
Yes.
concert thing, huh?
it was great. It was just really great. But it's
Okay.
a very moving song, and obviously, I mean, it's a great thing to me to sing about the
I can't
faithfulness
hear.
of God.
I don't hear it in my ear right now. I think we
Okay.
put that in post. But I'm gonna have to look because I'm pretty sure he's been faithful. He's been faithful, but not that one.
It's really like kind of slow. It's like He's been
Yes.
faithful.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't remember the last time I heard it, but anyway, it's been a long time, and so it just came to me. And
Maybe I just listened to it a lot and just assumed we've listened to it, but it's been
Yeah.
a long time.
I don't know. Like I've tried to think of songs from my childhood that like I want to show the kids. I'm like, oh, this is a good song, but I never remembered this one, and then it came up, and I was like, well, I just woke up thinking of it, and I'm like, wow, that came out of the blue. That's why you should listen to good music, because you never know if decades later, like God's stirring something in your heart, and you'll remember a song from years and years ago.
Well, the thing about good music is that, so we were getting our tires today, okay? And I don't know what was playing. There was a movie playing in the background, and the guy was like, "Oh, this is my favorite ending to a movie." And I was like, "What is this?" All I could hear was Guns N' Roses playing in the background,
Oh, wow.
and Welcome to the Jungle. You hear that in every sports arena. but I was like, this is your favorite ending. But okay, so just leave that as a backdrop, okay?
Okay.
But the thing about like listening to the Psalms, or what the old Jews probably did, the old fathers quoting these Psalms and us singing these old Christian songs, is this actually gets you through hard times.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of this episode, this segment was hopefully like what it meant to us at a certain time in our life.
Right.
There's been no point in my time where I'm like, oh, the welcome to the jungle has gotten me through a hard time, In fact, it might create more hard times in my life.
Wow.
But it's like, look, it's a terrible song, but it's, you hear it in every arena, and maybe it makes sense in a sports atmosphere, gladiators fighting, and all that stuff, the football players, the hockey players, all that, it's intense and all that. But that's not getting me through life.
Right.
And a lot of these songs, like there are hard times in life that we were just talking about, like in the previous segment, and it's songs that have verses connected to it, especially that just bring that to your attention and remind you of that God's been faithful.
Right.
And so that's why you listen to good music. Taylor Swift has never woke up someone in the middle of the night and like, this is going to get me through. And if it has, you're very shallow. I'm just saying. But anyway.
There's a lot of songs that, I just hear the song and it takes me to a specific point in my life. And I remember, just like this, God's faithfulness, or I'm just reminded of even something that was really hard. But it's like, but I remember that God brought me through. Yep. And so that song will bring me back to that. And I'll just, be so thankful that, wow, like that was really.
He'll bring me back. Oh, okay.
Anyway, so I think it's very important. Listen to great music. And so y'all go check out this song.
Go check it out.
You've got mail.
All right, babe, we got email. Now, we've been away for a little while, so I was hoping that we might have email. And this one is from
Tina.
I don't know if she wants her name, but Tina, she didn't say where she was from, so let's play a little game. Where is she from?
I'm going to go with Sandusky, Ohio.
Sandusky, Ohio, where Cedar Point is.
Yeah.
I'm going to say she is from Area 51.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
she's doing some research out there.
Okay.
So anyway.
Well, wherever you're from, we're going to answer your questions. So she said, "Hi guys, I love the show." Well, great.
Yeah. That one.
I have a question about marriage. What things should a wife ask her husband for permission to do? For example, should I ask for permission to pursue a dream like starting a business? Most wives make a lot of choices about homeschooling and such. Should I ask him about joining a certain co-op? Looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so this is a loaded question. This is an interesting question. Yeah, thank you. Because should I get my husband's, what should I ask him for permission for?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see what you say, because I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't ask for the right things.
Well, I think it's kind of, some of it is ridiculous. Like, does she have to ask to go to the bathroom? Does she have to ask to, eat some supper or whatever, but there are certain things that if you have a healthy relationship, you should be discussing anyways. Mm-hmm. So if I'm sharing my heart with you and you're sharing your heart with me, business ideas might come up and you could kind of sense how I'm feeling about that. So this question isn't in a vacuum to where all of a sudden it's like one day you just had a business idea and you're like, hey babe, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to start a photography business or whatever.
Right.
I'm going to watch kids in the house. They're like, well, we haven't discussed this,
Yeah.
But so hopefully there's that openness in your relationship to where you wouldn't be surprised. And so like getting permission. So this is an interesting question. I'm trying to think of in our relationship.
What I have to get permission to do?
Well, right, because even I trust you so much with my finances that I don't even ask what you spend money on. So I'm not afraid that you're going to go buy a new car. Mm-hmm. You know, if in the first few years of marriage you just went and bought a car, I might not trust you with the
I'm sure not. It'd be a little different.
Right. So be like, what are you doing? You know, there are certain things that we need to discuss on this. And I think I appreciate her heart on this, where she wants to do what's right. And so she wants to get permission. So I'm trying to figure out, like, is this someone who is like, do I have to get my husband's permission for this? You know, some of the examples she was saying,
like starting the business, but then with homeschooling, moms make a lot of choices. So
Yes.
I don't think you would want me to, every time I need to buy a book or some curriculum of sorts.
I'm a lot more easygoing than some people are. I'm not type A in that way all the time. But I like I said, I trust you in those decisions. And if you have a question, then you would bring it to my attention and ask what I thought. So I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of things that I would want permission, like to give you permission to do. Maybe, because permission sounds bad. It's a negative way of saying it. But like, you wanted to go see your mom and dad, and there's just no way that I could go with you. We actually took Joshua with you, and you're like, well, can I go? And I was like, of course you can go. I'm not going to stop you from seeing your parents. But you're asking in the sense of like, do you really need me around here? What do you think? Type thing. And I'm like, we got it here. We're like we said earlier, we're in a different place. The young ones aren't in here. But if you're not in that place to where you can have that conversation with your husband or your wife and be open with them, and so you're seeing this as like a business transaction where like we don't really talk, and so now I have all these ideas and I don't express them to them. Then you need to work on your marriage. You need to sit down in 20 minutes a night and go through a marriage book and get some of the ideas. No, I'm just kidding, but you know, you might do something like that. You know, whereas I don't know, what would you say? I get nervous when you answer the questions.
Do you? Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I got the mute button here. So, all of a sudden, she can't talk.
Wow. So I think with, I'm trying to think about this, but I don't really feel like there's anything that I need permission per se to do. I would say that when it comes to finances and, buying books for the kids or toys or clothes or anything like that, I feel like it really helps that, in the early years, we built up trust.
Right.
So, I wasn't just a free spender and you were like, what's she doing? You know? And so I feel like that really helps to where, obviously as the years went on, you could trust me. And so it wasn't something I'd go and ask you. I also feel like you wouldn't have wanted me to come with every purchase and be like, is it okay if I get some crayons for the kids? They don't have any. It's like, if they need that, go get it. Right. When it comes to like starting a business or things like that, I feel like, again,
please yes.
Wow.
Yes. Talk to me.
I feel like, again, I don't think I need permission, but I feel like it's something that I'm not going to do without much discussion with you.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
how's this going to affect our lives? How's this going to play out? Do you think that's, I already sometimes feel overwhelmed. Do you think this is a good time? Do you think I can handle it? Like, I just feel like for me to I'm a free agent. I can just start a business because I don't need your permission.
Which is true. You absolutely could,
Right.
But the way that we see the scriptures in the Bible, I don't think that's a good idea.
Right.
But you absolutely can do whatever you want. But that's why I think we work together as a unit. And the Bible teaches that the man is the head of the home. So he's in charge. That doesn't mean he dictates everything that goes on in the home. He doesn't have to be a brute. But he's guiding, he's leading. And part of that is him listening to his wife. And so if they come to that conclusion that, hey, you want to start a business or whatever, but I sure hope you guys are talking about this. I sure hope he knows that you have a heart for something, a desire to do something. It may not be the right timing. Maybe that's what he's pointing out. It's just not, we've decided to do this and it's going to interact with that. And so what if we put it on hold or whatever? But you're going to have those conversations with him about those things. But permission is just maybe you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I didn't mean like that. And I get it, but maybe you do.
Right.
Maybe there's some groups of people and some marriages that you need permission to do certain things. And I get that to a point, because it's like, I may not want you to take the kids certain places, and like, well, is it okay that I take them here? And I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But I just can't think of that. Early on in our marriage, we probably had a little bit more of that until that trust was built up.
Yeah, I will say early on, I feel like I bounced off more things from you, like about the kids and homeschooling and things we were going to go to, or things maybe my parents wanted to do with us or whatever. And I'd be like, what do you think? And basically, I felt like that was a safeguard, because I feel like God puts two people in a marriage, and women tend to see things one way and men tend to see things a different way. And I feel like it's a safeguard to be like, okay, I want to do this, but you also think it's a good idea. Now, if I bring it up to you and you're like, I don't think, like if you seem very hesitant and very reluctant to let me go, then I'm like, all right, it's probably just not a good idea.
No, and you were always one to try to see what I thought about things and implement those things.
Yeah.
And we constantly discuss those things. Now, I would kind of get irritated a little bit. Like, you don't always have to do what I want, but especially in the home, like, on simple things. But there are complicated issues. Starting a business is not just simple. I mean, even for the best of us, it's hard. And so even if it's a husband, I'd hope he would discuss that with his wife.
Well, yeah.
Like, he wants to quit his job and just start a new business. Like, well, please let me inform me what's going on. And
exactly.
Not that he needs her permission.
Right.
But like, we're working together here. So what's the plan? What are we doing? What's the goals that we have? So if your husband has goals that you're going against, you need to talk about that.
Right.
Because if you're wanting to go a direction and it goes opposite of well, that's going to create some issues in your marriage, and you need to talk about those things.
And you're right. I feel like going both ways. Basically, if you want to ask for my permission to do something that I really won't like, or vice versa, I'm like, it's just not going to be good for a marriage. So I feel like it's good to talk about everything. And when you find a lot of, you're hitting a lot of brick walls here, and when we start to bring this up, it's like, okay, maybe it's not the time. Maybe I need to try from a different angle. Maybe, I don't know, but I'd be very hesitant to do something that I know you really don't want.
Well, I give you an allowance, and I'm just kidding. I don't give you an allowance. I don't give you an allowance.
Funny.
No, but it can be a serious question. It is a serious question.
It is.
And I would need to know a little bit more on that specific situation. But for us, that's an easy one for us, because your heart's desire was always to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I had to push you into, like, think about what you want in the family, and you're running things in the home for the most part. So if you have freedom, I trusted you implicitly on spending and money and handling things like that. You were never frivolous in that area. So it was quite easy for us, for me at least. But if there's some issues, there's going to be some trust issues. Say maybe you showed your heart to him and he shot you down, and so you really want to do this, but the fact that you're asking for permission sounds like maybe he's not going to like it,
right?
And but talk to him about it. I don't know the whole situation, so email us back if it makes there's a little bit more to the story, and maybe we could help out a little bit more. But honestly. Communication is the best. Yeah. Just talk to him.
The Mike Charleston Show.
All right, so this is going to be called This or That, and this is something we came up with. This will kind of change as it goes, I guess, but Elizabeth wanted to do it. This is my daughter, Elizabeth. Say hi.
Hi.
She's not used to the microphone, and
nope.
she's not
or
very
the camera.
loud.
So
yes, but she wanted to do this, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you got for us?
All right. So the first question is, would you rather go back in time to the defeat of Jericho or the Tower of Babel?
So would I rather go back in time to see the Jericho? Mm-hmm. The defeat of Jericho?
Yeah, the walls of Jericho fall down.
So they won at Jericho, but okay. The walls falling down. Or the...
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, that's what you would say?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that's the options.
Not Tower of Babel.
Or that if you're Chuck Missler, sure.
Tower of Babel. To me, this one's an easy one. It's easy. It didn't go back to the walls of Jericho.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Tower of Babel, I think, would be interesting. I'd be really curious to see, like... when everybody, so they're all speaking one language. First of all, what language were they all speaking? Then
Like, what were they actually building?
what were they building? And like so much that did
Right.
God actually feel threatened? Like, oh no, they're
I
going
don't
to be
think
able
he
to build.
felt threatened.
Okay, well, I'm sure not. But then, so their language all gets confused, and then it's like, okay,
What was
we don't
that?
speak the same language, and then I
What?
do it. Whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, did everybody start like trying to say something to each other?
Oh, my
I guess.
goodness.
Anyway, and
I
then
know
they
where you
like,
get it from.
and then so they had to find people, and so they would like do their gibberish and be like, "Oh, you don't speak mine," and so then they keep going, and so then they like paired off in groups because
Okay,
it's like we
that's
understood
neat,
each other.
but that's not the right answer.
Okay, no, it's not the right answer.
So Jericho, seeing them march around 7 times and watching the walls fall down and all that.
And the walls came tumbling
I mean, that's
down. Yeah.
Joshua's one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament, and this
Yeah.
is the climax, one of the big stories of that. And I'm assuming that's even the other things that build up to it, maybe, or if it's
Sure.
just that day, it's fine with me. I
Yeah.
want to see the walls fall down, and that's
Yeah.
a pretty impressive feat. Not to disparage the other one. The point of this is this or that is where they're kind of close, and you gotta,
Yeah.
decide. So I don't know.
I think
definitely
we're both
pick
going with Jericho.
Ding.
All
That's right. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay. Would you rather have seen David as king or Esther as queen?
So to me, this one's easy too.
Wow, I'm
well,
very curious.
I mean, I love Hadassah, the story
Okay.
of Hadassah, which is Queen Esther. I love the story because there's so many good things in there.
Yeah.
Mordecai, Esther saving the Jews from extermination from Haman. I mean, it's all good.
Yeah.
But it's King David we're talking about. And how he became king is it how he became king? I mean, he was anointed by Samuel. That's not really exciting to see. But he goes out and kills Goliath. And
That
then
was
he's,
before he was king, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
It was before.
it was before, but that's all the build up, and then he.
Okay, well, at some point, how much build up,
It's king,
like-
so then King David becomes king because he's been chased by Saul this whole time, and he doesn't kill Saul, and he waits for the Lord to do it. And to me, it's David. Even though the story of Esther is right up there, it's right there in my heart because I want to name one of my kids Hadassah, and we're done. So grandkids, hint, hint, someone. Hadassah is a good name.
Well, so I wonder if you pick David because you're a man. Because
Yes.
me, I would pick Esther because I'm like, David, look, David is a great character and he's obviously
Great
a
king.
man after God's
Right.
own heart. And yeah, David's line continues and Jesus is going to come back and rule on the throne of David, right? Or something like that. So-
Wow, something like that. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously he's a pretty prominent Bible character, but I'm just thinking about him as king, like anything great. Nothing's really coming to mind, but Esther is just like saving her people from extermination.
Okay,
Here she
you persuaded
goes.
me. Esther is a better story.
Okay, I'm like-
and there's no one here. Where's Chuck? I need him to persuade me on David. Like, what's?
Yeah, sorry, but I'm just saying,
I mean,
like,
this whole story of David is a great story, but I mean, there was some Bathsheba issues there, and
there were some stories that I'm like, maybe those aren't my favorite Bible stories, but
I'm really bad on switching, aren't I, Joshua?
Anyway, but Esther, I feel like, I can sense her, all she was feeling as she's about to go into the king, and she could be killed for this, but she prays and she fasts, and just, I don't know, the whole story of Esther, the whole book of Esther, I think is just
I guess you got to get more
fascinating.
specific on David. Like, which story are we talking about? The whole story, because there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, but it's David as king.
Yeah, just
of course,
David
it
as king.
does say Esther as queen, so some of that stuff was before she became
Absolutely,
queen. So
yes.
whatever,
So yeah,
but-
she didn't do anything as a queen, right?
She did too. She saved her people.
Well, okay, as queen,
The
sure.
whole feast and her whole people are going to be exterminated. Here is Satan coming in to try to exterminate the Jews
and
forever.
David's whole people were going to be exterminated if it wasn't for him. He had to defend his country and stuff.
Okay, well, anyway, so he might be split on this. I'm not sure. I think Esther might have a little bit more.
Yeah, I still like David, but okay, let's go.
All right, next one.
All right. The next one is: would you rather see Jesus feed the 5,000 or raise Lazarus from the dead?
Okay, you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah.
Why do I have to go first?
I can go first, but I don't want to persuade you. She already knows my answer.
Okay, well,
So-
go ahead and give it then if she knows.
Okay, so my answer is I would rather see the 5,000 fed.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I know. And I asked Lydia, she said feeding the 5,000. I asked Elizabeth and she said, well, obviously raising Lazarus. And I'm like, why is it so obvious? Of course, somebody being raised from the dead is pretty amazing. And I would love to have been there for that. But I'm thinking feeding the 5,000, I'm just thinking the multitudes, like all these people are impacted by this. And just to see, like, I know what we started with, and look, guys, like it's still going. Like this is just, and just to see people's faces as they're like, wow, there's enough for me too, and like.
I think some of them were clueless. But I would love to agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. So it's definitely Lazarus, because no one, well, I shouldn't say no one's been raised from the dead like that, but for 4 days where he stinketh, he was stinky, and they had to unwrap him and he was alive, and that had to just blow people's mind. Like, come on. Like, so the 5,000, I am not disparaging the 5,000. Like, that is an amazing miracle, obviously. But I bet you there were people there that didn't even know what was going on. I think the disciples knew. What was going on. They had to, because they're like, all we got is 5 loaves or 2 fishes or whatever it is, 2 fishes, 5 loaves
and 2 fish.
And there's no way this is going to work. And then it just multiplies in front of them, and they had 12 baskets left over, which they were supposed to learn a lesson from, and they didn't. And that's all great. But to see someone dead for 4 days in the grave, pull them out, raise from the dead, come on.
I mean, I get it. It's hard not to want to see that. So, I mean, whatever, maybe, but I don't know.
I am the resurrection and the life. The other one's I am the bread of life.
I get it.
Look, they're both good, but I'm going to have to say it's definitely the resurrection.
All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts that maybe you could help persuade one or the other
on this one.
Switch? Oh, okay. Well.
Do we have another one?
Nope, that's it.
That's it? That's the list?
That's it, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I thought there was one more.
We had one more, but
that was a cheating one.
Under protest, so
it's kind of obvious what the answer would be.
Well, go ahead and say it just so people could understand. But
all right. Would you rather witness the 10 plagues or the crossing of the Red Sea?
Well, that wasn't what you said before.
Well, yeah, I changed what I said before because that was even worse.
Well, I understand. Yeah, what you said before was the
Exodus
or the resurrection,
of
Jesus Christ.
Okay, but the thing is,
the Sunday school answer is the resurrection.
Okay,
of
but
Jesus.
the thing is, the Exodus is like huge. So I mean,
the resurrection is huge.
I get it. And of course, everybody's going to want to see the. So I'm like, those can't compare.
Okay, so back to what is?
So then we went to. Go ahead.
Would you rather witness the 10 plagues or the crossing of the Red Sea?
Okay, so
either way, a lot of people are dying.
Well, okay, that's one way to put it. It's the going through the 10 plagues is interesting. They didn't experience the 10 plagues. They were in Goshen, so they didn't really get to experience a lot of the 10 plagues. So they didn't get to see them.
Except for the last plague.
The last plague was everybody, right? The death, right? But to watch the sea split, I mean, if you've watched the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, and it's a cheesy scene, but to witness the sea being split and walking on dry land, and then watching a whole army get swallowed up. Bing, answer, drop mic. Mic drop.
I feel like it's no contest. You got to go with crossing the Red Sea.
I mean, I'd still like to see the 10 plagues, though.
The 10 plagues, yeah. I mean, there's a lot there, and it'd be fascinating. Like, how in the world could it just be here? Like, I'm pretty sure darkness was not in Goshen where the Israelites were, but it was just in Egypt. And I'm like, how does that work? Like, because it was so dark that they couldn't. I mean, it's like darkness you could feel.
That's good. That gets a little tap on the.
A little tap. Well, I mean, I think it would have been fascinating to watch that happen, and just I would have been curious, like people's reaction. We know Pharaoh's reaction because the Bible records Pharaoh, what things he said in conversations with Moses and Aaron. But what are the other people thinking? It's like, guys, what are we doing? Get these people out of our land, or what was the message with that? But crossing the Red Sea is it's just too big. I'm gonna have to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so, any final thoughts there, Elizabeth?
Nope.
All
right.
She's a woman of many words. She does not get that from, I don't know. We both talk a lot, so. Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for this episode. I'm not sure if this is the last segment or if we're going to adjust it or whatever. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we will see you later.
The Mike Charleston Show is brought to you by Fellowship of Believers. For more information, go to our website at fellowshipofbelievers.org. Thank you for listening. We hope we have encouraged you to stand strong in the Lord Jesus and grow in Him.